Good day, everyone. I am RGV Kakano, one of the reporters in the Chapter H, which is the Assessing Reading. So, before anything else, I would like to start my reporting, or I would like to start my discussion with a quote. To learn to read is to light a fire. Every syllable that is spelled is a spark. So I would like everyone who are listening to this video to comment down below their thoughts or their opinions regarding about the particular quote that I've given, which is to learn to read is to light a fire, and every syllable that is spelled is a spark. Okay, so reading is a skill that a teachers expect the learners to have, diba? So, in literate societies, most normal children learn to read by the age of 5 or 6, and some even earlier. So, with the exception of a smaller number of people with learning disabilities, reading is a skill that is taken for granted. So learning in a foreign language, reading is likewise a skill that teachers simply expect learners to acquire. So like what I've said earlier, diba, as an educator, we expect the students, especially when we were teaching in the field, we expect that the students already know how to learn and to read. But enable for them to become an efficient read, lead, reader, they need to understand this two particular fundamentals for them to become an efficient reader. So the number one is the bottom-up strategies. So this refers to the strategies for processing separate letters, words, and phrases. So if the students were able to separate letters or were able to recognize different patterns or chunks of language components, and that mean that that particular student has a bottom up strategies or has achieved that bottom up skill. Next is the top down, which is a driven strategies for comprehension to develop appropriate content and formal schemata. So in bottom up, there does not require really critical thinking or does not require higher order thinking skills. And top down, they may require more knowledge because the students were able to form schemata or were able to form or construct meaning from a particular text that they are reading. Okay, now let's proceed to the different types or genres of reading. So as we consider a number of different types of genres of written text, the components of reading ability and specific tasks are commonly used in the assessment of reading. So there are different types of genres of reading. Number one, we have the academic reading, the job-related reading, and then the personal reading. Now let's define each. First, we have academic reading. Academic reading is an active process that goes beyond merely reading and highlighting text. So the students need to have an active interaction with or make connections between the text that they are reading. So some examples of academic readings are essays, lab reports, journal articles, dictionaries, and newspapers. Next is job-related reading. So when we say job-related reading, it is a type of reading that has something to do with job. So this includes report memos, financial documents, bills, manuals directions, and many more. Next is personal reading. So personal reading is a type of reading that does not necessarily require critical thinking. So this includes novels, short stories, jokes, drama, poetry, recipe, and calendars. So personal reading are used most commonly for each of us. So when we read something that would entertain us, so that could be considered as a personal reading. Okay. When we realize that this list is only the beginning, it is easy to see how overwhelming it is to learn to read in a foreign language. The genre of a text enables readers to apply certain schemata that will assist them in extracting appropriate meaning. If, for example, readers know that a text is a recipe, they will expect a certain arrangement of information, ingredients, and will know to search for a sequential order of direction. Efficient readers also have to know what their purpose is in reading a text, the strategies for accomplishing that purpose, and how to retain the information. The content validity of an assessment procedure is largely established through the genre of a text. So, for example, if learners in a program of English for tourism have been learning how to deal with customers needing to arrange bus tours, then assessments of their ability should include guidebooks, maps, transportation, schedules, calendars, and other relevant texts that could help those those people in dealing with their different customers. Now, aside from attending the genres of text, the skills and strategies for accomplishing reading emerge as a crucial consideration in the assessment of reading ability. The micro and the macro skills below represent the spectrum of possibilities for objectives in the assessment of reading comprehension. Okay, the micro skills. So I would not discuss each micro skills that have mentioned in the module which can be found on the pages 187 to 188. I will only summarize the overall context or a concept of the micro skills, the macro skills, and the reading strategies. Okay, now for the micro skills, it develops students in understanding the micro components of language, such as phonemes, morphemes, syllable words, phrases, and sentences. So in this, the students were able to discriminate among these distinctive graphemes and orthographic patterns of English. So the students were able to recognize grammatical words such as or grammatical word classes such as nouns, verbs, pronouns, adjectives, or systems such as tenses, agreements, and pluralization. So those other or those micro components of language. So the students should acquire these micro skills. Next is the macro skills. So the macro skills develop students the major skill of reading, which includes getting specific informations, textual meanings, textual references, and even understanding beyond textual meaning. That is according to Mantra and Mindiastoli on 2019. So in macro skills, the students are able to recognize the rhetorical forms of written discourse and their significant interpretation. So the students were able to describe events, ideas, or infer links and connections between events, deduce cause and effects, or detect relations as a main idea, or they were able to find the supporting idea, the new information, and then the generalization and the exemplification of a particular text. So those are skills that needs to acquire the students in the macro skills. Next is the reading strategies. So according to Song on 1998, he points out that reading strategies are important because they help learners to improve their efficiency in reading. So in reading strategies, so it is very important for the students to develop their skills in reading comprehensions and then their efficiency in reading as a whole. So, in the previous chapters, we saw that both listening and speaking could be subdivided into at least 5 different types of listening and speaking performance. So, in the case of reading naman, there are varieties of performance as derived more from the multiplicity of types of text or the genres listed above. So katong explain ako ganiha. And then from the variety of over types of performance, nevertheless, for considering assessment procedures, there are several types of reading performance that are typically identified with these uh, various assessment tasks. Number one is a perceptive reading. So first, let us define what is perceptive reading. So perceptive reading focus primarily on the bottom processing. In other words, if a teacher is trying to assess that the students is really know or really know how to read or not, so this type of reading would simply be a way of assessing the student. So perceptive reading is very important. It's a type of reading that simply allows a teacher to know if the students can read or not. So that is the perceptive reading. Now let's proceed to the selective reading. The selective reading can be identified into two forms, the skimming and scanning. So the reader does not read all the content. Instead, he or she consciously selects and reads only portions of the text. So skipping over considerable amount. So in selective reading, so the students are do not really read all the selections. He or she will skip or scan particular chunks of information that in the text for considerable amount na noon. So the students need to carefully um, skip those particular informations that are not are those that are just like mga supportive details lang siya in a particular concept. So in selective reading, it is very effective for a student to do those types of reading. Next is the interactive reading. So it enables readers to be consistently challenged, but also encourages them to use what they already know. So in other words, the readers interacts actively engages with the text to decode, assign meaning, and interpret applying their prior knowledge. So in interactive reading, so for example, nagbasa ka particular concept, then na ka nahibawaan ato about that particular concept. So if imo i-use imong prior knowledge through in decoding that particular concept, so that considered as an interactive reading. You and what you are reading is interacting to the knowledge that you have prior to that particular concept. You are using it to decode that particular concept, so that you can fully understand the particular concept. So that is interactive reading. From the word interactive, it means you are interacting of what you are reading. Next is extensive reading. So it is a type of reading where you engage with different types of reading material. So it is encourages reading fluency. So this in extensive reading, the students were able to get different informations or knowledge um, to different sources. So the students were able to gather data and to gather information that is best suit that he or she can use in decoding or understanding that uh, particular text. So it's like finding similar concept or idea in different sources. Okay, now let's proceed to the figure 8.1, the types of reading by length, focus, and then the process. Okay, so process, let us define what is bottom-up and top-down. Okay, so when we say bottom-up reading, it is a model that emphasizes the written or printed text. So nag-focus siya more on sa text nga imong gihatag sa teacher sa assessment. Then reading is driven by a process that results in meaning. Next is ang top-down. Top-down asks the readers to construct meaning from the text. So, muna siya difference sa duha sa bottom-up ug top-down. Okay, now let's proceed to the length of the perceptive. The perceptive should be short. Emphasize siya. Strong emphasis on the short because it focuses more on, it does not, it focuses more on the bottom-up. So, it does not require the students to, to construct meaning from a text. So they just need to know the difference, or they just need to know the forms, not the meaning of the text of the assessment that you're given to them. Okay, so the length short, um, strong emphasis, ang sa focus kay sa form siya, not sa meaning. So strong emphasis siya dira. Ang process is bottom up. So it focuses jud siya more on the printed text na gihatag sa teacher. So the students need to read it to form to results in the meaning. So for them to answer that particular assessment. Next is for the selective naman. Selective could be short or could be medium. So ang length pwede siya sa duha. And next is more emphasis siya more sa forms, but pwede po siya nimo gamiton in construct ay in focus po siya sa meaning. So pwede siya sa duha because in the process sa malantaw ninyo sa bottom up pwede siya Sa top-down, pwede siya, which is, ang top-down, di ba, mag-construct of meaning as student. So, pwede siya sa duha. So, it is applicable for both sa process sa bottom-up o sa top-down. Next is for the interactive. So, the interactive emphasizes more on the medium, ang length niya. So, as like what I've explained earlier, ang interactive, the readers need to interact with a particular text. So, the students need to use its prior knowledge to decode the concept. So, ayang gamiton niya ang both knowledge na nakuha niya sa text o ang prior knowledge nga iyang nahibaw-an. So, it focuses more, it emphasizes more on the meaning as like what I've said earlier. So, ang interactive, the students need to make an interaction. So, because of that, the students were able to form a schemata, and then the students were able to make judgments from the text that he or she is reading. Okay, so pwede po siya sa form, emphasis siya sa form, pero mas strong emphasis siya sa meaning. Okay, pwede siya sa bottom up, but it has more on the strong emphasis in top down. So as a teacher, we can use this interactive reading in assessing the students' top down abilities in interactive. So we were pwede ta maka-form og essay or pwede ta magpa-construct sa ila og meaning apart from the text na ilang gihatag because it is mentioned or it has a strong emphasis on the top down. Next is the extensive. So extensive long gid siya. So the length of the extensive is very long because it emphasizes strong emphasis on the length of the text, and then it focus more na jud siya on meaning. So at this point, the students na jud need to form because it applies to include professional articles, essay, or technical reports or books. So this particular extensive reading has a longer stretches of this course. So, pwede na siya, kani siya nga type of assessment, kaya pwede ni siya pabasa nimo sa student out of the classroom hour. Kay kuan man kay siya, kanang time consuming kay siya. Kay kuan ba siya, ang length niya is ang long. So, pwede ni siya, pwede, pwede ni siya basahon sa students outside a classroom hour ang sa extensive. Okay. Focus is more on top-down, just like what I've said. The students were able to construct meaning from the text that they have reading in extensive reading as well. Okay. Okay, now, so let's proceed in designing assessment tasks for perceptive reading. Okay, so there are assessment of basic reading skills may be carried out in a different number of ways. Okay, so the designing assessment task, I would not explain it one by one. It can be found in the module pages 190 to 193. So narito ang different types of assessment that can be used in the perceptive reading. So some examples are reading aloud, written response, multiple choice, and then picture cute items. So I would not explain it one by one because it's very time consuming. It is very understandable. It can be located in the module. Okay, next for the assessment, designing assessment tasks in selective reading. So here are some possible tasks that we can use in assessing lexical grammar aspects or the reading ability or the selective reading ability of the students. Okay, some of the examples that can be found in the module are the multiple choice for form focus criteria. Okay. Okay, now I will explain some example. Okay, in multiple choice vocabulary or grammar task, here the teacher make an options item which has which is a multiple choice which has 4 options. Okay, number 1. He's not married, he's young, A, B single, C first, the husband. Okay, so the students were able to, and we can test now the we were able to test now the vocabulary or the grammar ability of the student about this particular context through these particular options. Okay, so for example, napapod. So if there's no doorbell, please kneel, type, knock, shout on the door. So the students were able to choose different choices that is related or that we can use in testing or assessing their vocabulary under their grammar ability. Okay. We also have a contextualize multiple choice vocabulary grammar task. Okay, so diri na siya yung mga conversation between two people. For example, is number one, na si Oscar. So, Oscar, do you like champagne? And then Lucy answered, no, I can't stand or prefer or hate it. Okay, so the students were able to answer for this particular questions with different options, then we can assess their contextualized idea or their contextualized ability, which could be assessed in their vocabulary and their grammatical abilities. Then next, we can also use a multiple choice closed vocabulary grammatical task. So in this one, when we say a closed type of test, so these are the type of tests that has blanks and it's either in the sixth or in the seventh word in a sentence, and then the students need to supply the word that is appropriate or that is suitable for that particular sentence or idea. Okay, so I've lived in the United States, so in 21, since or for during 3 years. Okay, so the students would answer or would choose the correct response to that particular um, text through using multiple choice closed test. Okay. So for example, ang answer letters A. So I've lived in the United States since 3 years. Okay. So in that we can assess the abilities of the students and their ability and their vocabulary and their grammar as well. Okay. So now the next reporter will continue the matching task, that is an assessment of the selective reading, which will be discussed by Ms. Sherilyn Pineda.